Hi guys, welcome to our first game of our May 1815 campaign. So we're going to be playing this campaign. We're going to use some inspiration from Henry Hyde's campaigns books to use those guides to regulate our campaign movement, some of our losses, some of the attrition. We're going to factor those things in. We're going to be using general d'armée rules, and we're going to be using some map movement to bring my various different Napoleonic forces into conflict. So for those of you who've seen it, there's an accompanying video that sets out the first moves of the campaign with the initial deployment orders for the Prussians, allies, Anglo-Dutch, and indeed for the French. And what we've got on the table today is the village of Binche. I hope I've not butchered that pronunciation too much. But the French have pushed forward across the Sambre from the village of Soire towards Binche with their 1st Cavalry Division. This is screening the left-hand side of their advance by their main attacking force, the 1st Corps under Dillon, and that is approaching the village of Charleroi. So these French forces are looking to screen this Prussian command from the left of Charleroi as they face it, prevent them intervening there, potentially cut off their retreat towards their supply depots in the east, and seeing what opposition they face. Well, actually here they've picked a tough nut to crack. The whole of the Prussian 1st Cavalry Brigade is in place, so we actually have 1st Cavalry Brigade in Prussian terms, but nearly a division in French terms. So we've got 2 regiments of dragoons, the 1st and 6th regiments you can see on table here. Each one of those are large regiments, so they'll benefit from that. We have a Prussian horse artillery battery, which is covering the flanks of the village itself. And then we have a large Landwehr regiment as well on the left flank. The brigade commander is here in the centre. So the Prussians will have 2 ADCs, as will the French. The French have the 1st Cavalry Division. So we have the cavalry command and the brigade command for the Lancers down here. And we've brought on 2 regiments of Lancers and the divisional horse artillery battery to potentially threaten this more powerful dragoon formation. And we're trying to learn some lessons from previous cavalry combats, and the French at least are going to try an attack in waves here. So we've got some regiments to fall back behind, and we've also deployed in more depth as the French here, as we deployed 2nd, and we are pretty masked from the Prussian artillery. As we move across to the Prussian left flank, the French right, you can see the 2nd Brigade in the 1st Light Division. We've got a regiment, 7 bases of Hussars, and just over 4 bases of Chasseurs, and they're facing off against the Prussian Lancers. So we'll see how that cavalry exchange goes, and the Lancers, the Landwehr Lancers are supported, as I said, by the Prussian artillery battery. So this might be a tighter fight on the left. All right, so we'll see who wins this skirmish for Binche, and being a campaign, we might consider early withdrawals if we want to preserve our forces. Certainly the orders for the Prussians are to delay the French as long as possible and then withdraw to the northeast towards Charleroi to prevent themselves being cut off. All right, enough of an introduction. I hope you enjoy this cavalry skirmish and enjoy this overall campaign that will run on and off through the course of the autumn. Cheers, everyone. All right, so at the end of the first turn movement on the left flank, the French had initiative and moved first. The veteran 7th Hussars were able to move forward and have deployed into line, wanting to make sure that the Landwehr Lancers don't have a wider frontage than them, which gives them an advantage in combat. And to support them, the Chasseurs of Cheval have also deployed into line from column and are within support range. Responding, the Landwehr Lancers have moved forward. The first of their sets of squadrons have advanced over the hedge line. The second are still behind it, being a large regiment, effectively the 2 wings can provide mutual support to one another as one of the optional rules which we will be playing today. This will still leave a shot to the flank, potentially towards the lancers over to the right, or the slightly closer target, hence probably more threatening target, an appropriate target, the hussars from the horse artillery battery. Otherwise, the French decided where they'd stay where they were on their with their lancer brigades. They can open fire with their artillery, and the dragoons have started moving forward, and their Jaegers that were deployed in the front of the formation have fallen back and formed up in the rear of the unit they're supporting. So just a little bit of artillery fire to do, and that will complete turn one. Right, so the French horse artillery will open up first, going against one of those heavy dragoon regiments, and this will be 2 dice at effective range and an extra fire dice because the target is in column. That's pretty good. That's a 10 and an extra casualty. So at effective range, the battery, which was already deployed, is 3 casualties. So that'll be, with the combat dice, 4 casualties and a discipline test at -1 on the Prussians. Let's see what they do. They are just regulars, so they'll need a 7 or more. They roll an 8. There's a -1 penalty for the 4 casualties. That takes them down to 7. So they remain formed and will not be disturbed, other than the casualties, by that artillery fire this turn. So a good shot from the French, but not enough to deter the onrush of these Prussian dragoons. All right, Prussian guns open fire. This is also at effective range. It's just under 24 inches to the flank of that column. No combat dice, but there will be a bounce through. So an 8, that's pretty good at effective range. That is 2 casualties. And let's see if the bounce through does any casualties on the chasseurs. No, it doesn't, a 2. So not a bad start for the Prussian artillery. 2 casualties on the veteran French hussars. Right, that's where we are for end of turn 1. Let's move on to turn 2. Okay, so the French did better. They had 2 ADCs, the Prussians only 1. They all were allocated for brigade rerolls, and none were actually needed. Every brigade on the table is active. There's an important initiative roll here, remembering the French had initiative last turn, so they'll have it on the case of a draw. And indeed, it's a draw, 6 against 6. So the French retain initiative for turn 2. What are they going to do? What charges are going to be declared? True to the spirit of the light cavalry tradition, we have charges all across the line. So French lancers have charged against these true dragoon regiments. We'll see how they do. And over here, the 7th Hussars have charged the Landwehr lancers. Let's see where we do. We'll start with the Hussars against the Landwehr and see if that French enthusiasm pays off with a good charge result. Alright, let's roll the charge results. Simply, this will be +2 to the French with their higher morale status. Let's see how we do. The French roll a 6, the Prussians roll a 5. The Prussians, being a large unit, will take the opportunity of the re-roll from their second wave of squadrons. They remain on a 5. The French are on a 6, and they have a +2, so they've won by 3. Let's see what the result on a +3 is. They will melee with Elan. The defenders will melee unformed. Okay, so the French are not going to take a re-roll. They would have to get a 6, so only a 1 in 6 charge to make the result any better. So they're going to stick with that, and let's see how the melee happens later in the turn. We'll move those forces into contact. Alright, here we go. Let's roll the charge results for this combat. So the Prussians and the French are the same quality troops. Both the Prussians and the French are committing their commanders to the attack. The Prussians will get a reroll for being a large unit and a reroll for flank support. The French will get a reroll for having a rear support. The French also have double the frontage, I believe, of the Prussian unit. So the French will actually be on +1 to this roll, but the French will only have 1 reroll. The Prussians will have 2. Alright, let's see how we do. So this is +1 to the French. The French roll a 6 and the Prussians roll a 6. Well, the Prussians are going to start. They are going to take their first reroll for depth. That takes them down to a 5, and then they'll go for their flank support. That takes them up to an 8. The French will re-roll their 1. Why not? They can't do any worse. They get an 11. So that's an 11 plus 1 takes them to 12. So they have 1 by 4. This will be the same result on the other side. The French melee with Elan, and the Prussians are unformed. This is going to be a tough melee round, I think, for the Prussian forces in this. Right, this is going to be a really tough melee for the Prussians. They start with 5 dice. They lose 1 for being unformed. The French start with 5 dice. They gain 1 for Elan, and then they gain 2 for 2 better morale level than the Prussians. So the French have 8 dice. The Prussians have only 4. Let's see how this combat plays out. That looks like pretty much a disaster for the Prussian landwehr. That's only 1 casualty they have caused on the French hussars. The French have caused 4. That will break the landwehr and drive them from the table. This combat could also be challenging for the Prussians on the right flank. They start with 5 dice, they lose 1 for being unformed. The French start with 5 dice, they gain 1 for Elan, and they gain 1 for lances. So it's 7 dice against 4. Equally disturbing odds for the Prussians. Let's see how they do. Alright, Prussians again do badly. This time they don't cause a single casualty, and the French have caused 3. That'll be another victory, and my god, another Prussian brigade routed off the table. It looks like this game is almost over before it started. Alright, here we are in turn 2. So the Prussian supports were in contact range with the Lancers, so they had to step back 9 inches, which they've done, and the Prussian Lancers have stepped forward and taken the ground here. This brigade is now broken. It's lost 2 of its units who've routed off table. We did have the forethought to swivel our guns here, so we will be able to fire our guns at the hussars who've broken through on the left flank, but there's really not much left for the Prussians, and I think it's definitely time for them to skedaddle. Let's see what they do and see who gets initiative as we approach the 3rd turn, and see if the French can really drive home this round. Okay, so any firing of the turn will be the Prussian guns here, who can fire canister because it's a closer range, but they did have to move to redeploy the guns this turn. Let's see how they do. So the Prussian guns will fire at -2 for being... for having to move. So how did we roll? We rolled a 5. That won't do anything pretty much reflective of the Prussian effectiveness in this turn. So on a 3 at close range, that is a fatigue casualty on the Prussian guns. Alright, so we've rolled for IDCs. We rolled 2 for the French, and we rolled a 1 and a 2 for the Prussians for their 2 brigades. Although I've realised they're not actually a broken brigade yet. They had 4 units, and they've still got 1 unit of dragoons and a horse artillery battery in place, so they're at 50% casualties, not more than that. So they would have needed a 3 rather than a 5 to activate, but they have no ADCs, and there are falter tests on the dragoons and on the Lancer regiment, which included the horse artillery battery. They have no ADCs, so they can't allocate anything to their falter tests. Therefore, they automatically savoir-qui-peut and flee off the table. That's it. The French light cavalry division has performed in an exemplary fashion and swept its way through Binche with barely any resistance from the Prussians, and they'll drive them away to the northeast. This is a great start to the campaign for the French.